Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your normal partners in crime, Greg Thompson, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
Nervous, man. I'm nervous. We got a primetime game this week, and I'm not used to this world we live in. So we can talk about it, but I'm a bit of a nervous wreck.
Yeah, I'm already preemptively tired. Like we're recording this at 7:30 at night, and the game won't even have kicked off for another hour after this.
Yeah.
I'm old, and that's late, and I'm going to be so tired after watching that game. I know I'll be wired, so I'm not worried about like literally falling asleep like an old man. But I'm going to be tired by the time that thing's done.
The day will be exhausting. I have a terrible amount of anxiety on game day as a fan, and I've learned to curb some of that anxiety by getting up early and making food, making breakfast, making some food before the game. That distracts me. I can't make food until 8 o'clock at night. I just can't do it. So it's going to be a long day for a fan pacing the house, watching other games. It's not going to be able to sit back and relax and watch football, which is why I like 1 o'clock games. It allows me to, watch some football. So it's a tough week, man. I know my anxiety's ramped up. I can imagine the players have a positive anxiety about playing on the national stage, and it's a big game. So all eyes are going to be on Buffalo for a huge game. And I know we say it all the time here, dude, but biggest of the year again to this point. Like they're all in different ways, but here we are again, one of the biggest games of the year.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things we joked last time about, can you consistently have the biggest game in 20 years over and over and over again? And there's different reasons why each game is big. And they obviously would have been huge to beat Baltimore, but I think they hung in the game and played well. Now coming in here, the Bills, we're walking in, it's week 15. We're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are one game behind us. And in the current sixth playoff spots, our fifth playoff spot, if the Steelers win, they have a lock on the fifth seed because they'd have head-to-head wins over us and over the Colts and and the Browns and other teams that could be going for that spot. The Bills have a chance to get their 10th win for the first time in over 20 years. The Bills have a chance to clinch a playoff spot early, and they have a win and you're in scenario early, not in the last week of the season. For the first time in 25 years, we haven't had a win the game and clinch playoff spot where week 16 or 17 doesn't really matter all that much in 25 years. So the fact that they're here, that makes it a really big game. And that, is the Steelers as big emotionally or even strategically as playing the Patriots or the Ravens? I get that it's not on par with that, but this is a huge opportunity to be able to do something, again, this franchise hasn't done in a quarter century.
You have all that like front loaded to emotional things that you just mentioned that are there present. It's there for the taking. But then I think you also have that it's a big game because you're coming off a loss, even though it was against a team a lot of us expected them to lose to. It was a very mental week of preparation. They talked about that, how draining it was mentally. People hadn't looked at their playbooks as much as they did for going against the Ravens. And that prep mentally and physically to get ready for that game and lose is hard. And to turn around in another must-win situation on prime time, all these things are building up as a really interesting test, I think, for a young team to see what they're made out of, because I'm a firm believer good teams don't lose back-to-back games in a year. It does happen, but you don't want that to happen. And especially at this final month of the year, they want to go 3-1 every month of the year. They need to win this game, in my opinion. You have to go into the playoffs winning. You have to go in high. You can't drop. I feel like you can't go into the playoffs 2 out of 2 or, wait and finally clinch your 10th win on the last game. You got to win this game. Take it, win a couple more before you go into the playoffs, try to get hot. So you're a team that everybody's worried about going into the playoffs. So I think that makes it even bigger than just all the surface stuff of the expectations of this team and who this team are on the national view.
Yeah, and let's look in a little bit further. Who is this team that we're playing? So for anyone who hasn't been paying attention early on, it looked like the Steelers season was kind of just going down the tubes. You lose Ben Roethlisberger for the season right off the bat. You have them start 0-3 and 1-4 overall. and it looks like things are over with. That's the point that you saw them make the trade for Minka Fitzpatrick, which a lot of fans and analysts question, saying, hey, wow, you could be giving up a top 5 pick. They made that
In a
trade.
lost year, in a lost season.
Yeah, they made that trade at 1-4. That is an incredible amount of faith in a roster at that point where you had a different backup quarterback. They've gone through 4 different quarterbacks, but now we're facing a team that's coming in winning 7 of 8. They are 8-5. They've now gone from Ben Roethlisberger through Mason Rudolph to a guy, Devlin Duck Hodges, who is their quarterback now, who is 3-0 as a starter and 4-1 in the games that he's played. And we are playing a team that is built fairly similarly to the Bills in that they're built around a dominant defense, a running game, and trying to put a quarterback in a position to not make mistakes. And although watching the film, I can't say that I'm overly impressed with Devlin Hodges. He doesn't make terrible mistakes. He hasn't made horrible throws to hurt them or penalize them. And their defense is the real deal. They lead the NFL in turnovers. They lead the NFL in sacks. They don't blitz quite as much as Baltimore, but they're 7th in the league in blitz rate. And I think after what Baltimore did, we should expect them to bring the house.
Yeah, no, I've had that conversation with a few people. The cover 0 thing is being blown way out of proportion this week. It's the filler this particular week of waiting for content for the game to come up. We're not going to see a lot of that, but that doesn't mean we're not going to see different types of blitz packages. Not all blitzes are coming out of cover 0. So
most aren't.
Yeah, and Josh hasn't just struggled against cover 0, but he's struggled against different types of pressures and people bringing different looks his way. And the Steelers have done a really good job dialing up blitzes, dialing up pressures without the blitz. Their defense is really one of the top-rated defenses in the league across the board by almost every metric, and they're getting the turnovers, where Buffalo's starting to get some turnovers now at this point in the season, but they started out not doing that. And that, I think, is going to be the biggest aspect of this battle, is 2 defenses that are really good. Who's going to come up with the turnovers in this game? Because we know the defenses are more than likely going to beat both of the offensive units. I feel pretty confident going into that the offenses aren't going to score a ton of points on either of these defense. So who's going to create the turnovers to really separate the difference? Because I really think that's going to be where the difference in this game is. And I know it sounds kind of basic, win the turnover battle, but when both offenses are pretty similar, they don't have a lot of threats against the defenses they're playing. I think it comes down to who can create some short field for those offenses.
Yeah, and Vegas agrees with you. They have this game as an over-under of 36.5, which is one of the lowest we've seen the entire season. It's the lowest I recall the Bills having. They had a 37 and a 38. 36.5 is really low. The Steelers are getting healthy at the right time. They got Marquise Pouncey back from suspension after that crazy incident with the Browns. And today, both running back James Conner and receiver Juju Smith-Schuster both practiced in full. So they're not absolutely sure to go. It sounds like Smith-Schuster is a little bit closer to going, whereas James Conner is really trying to make his way back from a nasty shoulder injury. So we'll see where that goes. But those are 2 huge offensive weapons for them. They have some names you recognize across the offensive line. I already mentioned Pouncey. David DeCastro is one of the best guards in the game, and Alejandro Villanueva is a great tackle. So their right tackle, Filer's not anything special. They have a swing tackle. They go with 6 offensive linemen fairly often with Zach Banner. Yeah. And Ramon Foster is okay. He's not anything special. But they have some really good ones. And Pouncey, DeCastro, and Villanueva are really, really good. And again, they put their undrafted rookie quarterback into a good position. They use a kind of a 4-headed running attack with Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell, even Tremaine Edmonds' brother Trey plays a fair amount for them in both a fullback, special teams, running back role. They just have a lot of weapons in the way that they approach things, spreading it around. I don't know that any one is one that I'm terrified of, but you saw their rookie Deontay Johnson scored a receiving touchdown and returned a punt for a touchdown last week. So Deion Kane is a name that some people recognize from Clemson. They picked up off a practice squad, actually, from Indy. So they have some people in different spots that I think can hurt you. I don't know that I'm terrified of Devlin Hodges individually beating us, but he's done good enough to keep them on schedule, make some aggressive throws. He's made some downfield throws and at least put the ball out there. And that if their defense does what they've been doing, which is leading the NFL in sacks and turnovers, and they're causing negative plays or getting the ball back directly, he's been good enough to cash in.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think they don't want him to be the guy that win this game and really win any game. I think they just kind of want him to keep the offense on schedule. If he isn't a third and long, make a play or two in the game, but they don't want to rely on Hodges to be what leads them to victory here. I think they're going to rely on their pretty deep running back room. Steelers always seem to do really well with depth at running back, and we're seeing it again this year. They really haven't slowed down due to the injury to Connors. And that's surprising to me because they're names that you don't hear a lot about. I think Benny Snell was pretty big in the drafts. Jalen Samuels was all right. But you start to hear these names come up, and it's the thing that the Steelers do well. And I think you touched on it. It's the offensive line. Yeah. They have a really good offensive line. They dominate the line of scrimmage. And really, I feel like they feel like they can put anybody back there with a basic skill set and grind out some yards, get some running game going. So I think that's really their plan of attack against the Bills. I know that it's been stopped more and more lately, but that's still the weakness of this defense. If you're going to attack this defense, even though they've gotten better at the running game and our defensive line is playing really well, if I'm watching the film, that's still the best place to attack this team, especially if it's a strength of yours. So I think they're going to rely on that. I do like their wide receiving weapons. I like James Washington in the draft. I think that he's really coming into his own over there. Obviously, again, Schuster back's huge. These are guys that can make catches even when defended, which I think they're going to have to do against the Bills. The Bills defend well, so they're going to have to win at the point of attack when the ball's in the air. And I think they have the guys to do that, win some of those 50-50 balls and stuff like that. And that's kind of a spot where Trey White struggled in, if he struggled at all, is going up against guys that can be physical with him, go up and get balls on him. So I think they get some stuff done in the passing game. I agree with you. I'm not super worried about it, but I do worry a guy like Hodges, they don't have a lot of film on. He is rapidly gaining confidence because when you start out being an undrafted guy, getting your first start every week, your development is way quicker when you're that kind of guy versus a Josh Allen, who's a top pick. You're learning everything. He doesn't have anything to lose. He's coming in, he's getting a lot of confidence, and that's a little bit scary to me. But I think some of that confidence is going to get shaken against this Buffalo Bills defense. They've done it to better quarterbacks. They've shaken Tom Brady. If they can confuse Tom Brady, I think that they're going to be able to get to Duck Hodges a few times, show him some looks that really confuse him pre-snap. And they'll keep it simple, but it's all stuff that's going to confuse a guy that hasn't seen any defense like this before. It's one thing to watch the tape, but it's another to line up and see Jordan Poyer in the box and be like, wait, what's he doing? Wait, and be all over the place. I think ultimately that's the advantage for the Bills. And if they're going to win this game, it's going to be confusing Hodges, making him get into stuff he's not comfortable, kind of dictating the pace of their offense through our defense.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I rattled off that they had gone 1-7 of 8. And you look at how they did that, it's very similar to some of the Bills' early wins in that, they won games by scoring 24, 27, 26, 17, 16, 20, and 23. Those were all wins. So never scoring more than 27 points, several of those winning with 16 and 17. That's very similar to some of the recipes that the Bills had early on. So I'm curious to see how they're going to be able to do that. I do think that over-under number sounds right in that It's not going to be a terribly high-scoring game. I do think that they're going to be able to throw a little bit more at them. I feel confident this is absolutely the best defense Devlin Hodges has ever faced, and it's the best defense that the Steelers have faced since the early season. Their early season run was nasty. They opened up Patriots, Seahawks, 49ers, Bengals, doesn't really count, and then Ravens. So having the Patriots, Seahawks, Niners, and Ravens for their first 5 games was really rough, and they lost all 4 of those, and they lost some of them pretty handily. So Hodges didn't play in any of those, and this is obviously going to shake him up a little bit in seeing this kind of defense now. So I feel a little bit better there, but obviously that's offset a little bit. This will be the first game that he's getting talents like Connor and Smith-Schuster back to be able to kind of buoy him a little bit further. So,
and there's always kind of anecdotally, and has nothing to do with any type of statistic, there's always these stories in sports where some guy with a clever name, Duck Hodges, comes out of nowhere and has a nice 5-6 game, whatever, run in him. It happens all the time in sports. There's no way to figure out when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen. But this does a little bit to me have that feel of like, here comes that guy. He's going to be Duck Hodges. He's going to be the next Gardner Minshew for the next 5 weeks. Everybody's going to talk about this guy. Bills can kind of stop a little bit of that. If he comes in and beats the Bills, it's going to be super annoying for the next 3 weeks about Duck Hodges. So hopefully the Bills do the nation a favor and kill this before it becomes a story, and then stamp their own card to the playoffs so everybody can start talking about us.
Absolutely. Let's flip over to the other side of the ball where I think is going to be the more interesting side of it, and that is this Steelers defense. And they have some names that people are going to recognize, and 3 of them are having really strong seasons in the front 7. Cameron Hayward is, just a stud who's been around for a while, 8 sacks at the defensive tackle position. A guy that many thought was maybe a little bit of a draft bust, Bud Dupree, coming out of Kentucky, finally coming along now with 9.5 sacks. And the leader by far in their front group is TJ Watt. And forever he had kind of been, oh, that's funny, JJ Watt's little brother. That's cute that he made the NFL. He's probably the leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year right now. The guy's got 12.5 sacks, 6 passes defense, 2 interceptions, 5 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries with, just a really, really impactful season overall. So he's a guy that makes me nervous coming off the edge to be able to make sure that we have a smart plan of how we're going to give either Dawkins or Cody Ford help to be able to do that. They move him around a fair amount. He doesn't always play off the left side. They do shuffle him around. His primary spot is there, and being able to set that up really is concerning. I mentioned the name earlier, trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick. I don't think their secondary is quite as good as what their front 7 is. Joe Hayden's pretty good at corner, but the other Edmonds brother, so Trey Edmonds is their fullback, running back, special teams guy. Their starting safety is Terrell Edmonds, so we're going to have 3 Edmonds brothers on the field here this weekend. I can't imagine being the parents of that situation. They have Steven Nelson out at the other corner, who was kind of a cast-off from Kansas City. Mike Hilton at nickel. Artie Burns is a name some people recognize as kind of a little bit of a bust as one of their backups. I don't think their secondary is as good as their front 7, but their front 7 is so good and brings so much pressure and gets to the quarterback consistently that their secondary doesn't have a chance to get exposed. So it's a really, really strong defense, and that front 7 is one of the best that we've seen all year.
Yeah, no, the front 7's fantastic, and I think that that's going to be the problem for the Bills. Again, this game's going to be one of those that, just like last week, that starts at the line of scrimmage, and I'm not sure who's going to win that battle. A lot of games, I kind of feel pretty confident, at least on the on the defensive side of the ball, that will win the battle. This time, both lines of scrimmage, man, it's going to be tough. I really think that either team could come out on top of that. And I agree with you that their secondary is not the best secondary the Bills have faced. Obviously, we faced a much tougher secondary last week, but this is an opportunistic secondary. They're playing much better with Minkah Fitzpatrick out there. I don't think that many in the league realized how good Fitzpatrick was when that trade went down, and people are like, what are they doing trading for him for that? This is one of the top safeties in the league, and they secured him. And this is a big deal for the Steelers defense to get a leader back there. Think about what Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer mean to this defense. Even when they're not showing up in the box score, you're seeing that on film. Fitzpatrick, he's everywhere. He was keeping contain on Kyler Murray last week out of nowhere, just coming up to the line of scrimmage, keeping contain on Kyler Murray. He was able to keep him at bay. I think they're going to use a lot of that type of stuff with Josh Allen, trying to keep him at bay, using some of their safeties in their backfield. So they are a bit of an athletic group, opportunistic group. But I agree with you. There's opportunities to expose them. And a guy like Cole Beasley should be able to eat within this, secondary, and even that, causing some stress to their linebacking core. So there's opportunities to get there, but there's always this thing in the pass game. If you either have lockdown corners who help out your defensive line, or you have a defensive line that help out your corners. And I think Pittsburgh is really relying on generating pressure on Josh Allen, forcing him to make bad throws and not allowing them to expose the secondary and letting some of these routes set up and Josh Allen hit open guys. So I think they're just going to try to cause a lot of havoc along our front with their front 7. And they got the guys to do it, and they're doing it at one of the best rates in football right now. And we saw what happened last week, man. So they're probably licking their chops watching the film, knowing that they're going to be able to get to Allen and expose some of the flaws in his game.
That's going to be the key to the game in my mind, is that, they're already one of the top blitzing teams. It's not the percentage that the Ravens did. So I think it's not realistic that you're going to see a team blitz 30 times like the Ravens did. That
Right.
was exceedingly high. I do think that we're going to see a lot. I do think they're going
And
to bring
probably more
pressure.
than they have,
Correct. I
I
think
would
we're going to
think.
see above their normal rate. So their
Yeah.
normal rate is in the mid 30s. They might be up to 50-50, something like that, for this game. And the key is, where is it coming from? So like you mentioned, with athletes like Bush at middle linebacker, you have Dupree and Watt off the edges. They do a lot of stunts and twists and play around with guys like Cameron Hayward. Javon Hargrave isn't a name that a lot of people realize or recognize, but he's a free agent coming up this year. And with Stephon Tuitt is out for the year, so he's not playing right now. I think Hargrave is a guy you're going to see get a bigger deal than many people know about in free agency. Tyson Alualu is a guy who was a bust in Jacksonville and has kind of been resuscitated here with them as well. And they move them around a lot so that you don't know who's coming. They do some of that zone blitz, so if it doesn't get home, you might be able to get a little bit of movement out there, and somebody who shouldn't be out covering space is having to cover space. So Singletary out of the backfield. Like you said, Cole Beasley, I think, is a great look to be able to get somebody there early. And in the chat, the guys were talking about this could be a really big tight end game. And that, I had brought it up earlier on that I'd like to see there be a little bit of repercussions for Dawson Knox and the drops that we've seen. Maybe this is a bigger game for Tyler Kroft, and to really find out, is he ready and fully back in rehab from his injury? Get more two tight end sets out there to be able to help chip, bump Dupree and Watt coming off the edge, or even whether it's chipping or bumping, or them not knowing who's staying in the block or who's going out in a route, can at least be able to throw them off a little bit, and then maybe get them out into some space against a guy who's not used to covering. So I'm curious to see how they do it, but their ability for Josh to learn from this, not get as rattled as he did against the Ravens, and be able to take advantage of maybe not as quite of a talented a secondary as the Ravens, is going to decide the game. If he can hit on a couple of those and take advantage of a opening, that's what will change where they're looking for.
So we talked about the possible pulling Knox back a little bit. I am worried about the tight ends and the catch rate among the tight ends, and I'm worried about Knox somewhat. But I think this is a game that's an example of why they don't feel that they can do that right now, because I think Knox has a much better opportunity of putting the linebackers and stressing them, putting that in conflict than Kroft does right now. And I think that's just an advantage when you're looking at the personnel for this week. And how do we get some of these linebackers in conflict? How do we open up some of this zone blitz stuff? And I think you just have to look at the athleticism. And even though he has a high drop rate, he still also is the only real playmaker so far at tight end. So it's a kind of a high risk, high reward thing right now. And I think that in a game like this, you go with the guy that gives you the high risk or the high reward. Just because Tyler Kroft hasn't shown that he really is going to do anything, and you might need a big player too. And even though he's dropped a few big ones, he's made big plays, and he's one of the few guys on this team that's made big plays. And I think Dawson Knox is a guy that might have to be the one to step up in this game and put those linebackers in conflict. It might not even be him stepping up in the sense of getting a lot of catches, but pulling looks. I think teams are starting to look at Knox, and he's putting guys in conflicts between the linebackers and the safeties because of his speed and because of his ability to go up and catch the ball. And so even if he's not getting looks or is dropping a couple passes, I just think he's more of a strategical feature of this offense than any of the other tight ends right now. And he might have to step up and have a big game.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly the biggest threat. He's certainly the one that is going to concern defensive coordinators the most, and the one that's going to threaten safeties, pushing them back. He's going to make them nervous about a linebacker covering him. That's not something that, defense coordinators aren't concerned about Tyler Kroft or Lee Smith. They're just not. So, I mean, they can still make a play here or there, but they're not going to threaten them that much. And I think I saw it kind of correlated online, seeing the idea of how they handled Ed Oliver, and the idea of dialing that back was easier because you had Jordan Phillips, and I don't know that we have that in Tyler Kroft, and that I don't want to see Dawson Knox benched. I don't want to see him not play, but that maybe it'd be healthy for him to go 50-50 with Tyler Kroft in there. But I think you're right in the fact that can you send that message and not impact the performance of the team at the same time? And I trust the coaches to know that. And there's also a piece of me that wouldn't mind a little bit more expanded look at Tyler Kroft down these final 3 games
Sure.
to know what we have going into the offseason and make sure we can make an informed decision on if we're going to pay him the money that he's due. So we'll see where that goes. And I know Joe in the chat was asking about the 3 receiver sets. I think we're going to see that the majority of the time anyways. I don't think this is going to change the fact that 11 personnel with, John Brown, Cole Beasley, a mix of McKenzie and Foster, Dawson Knox, and Devin Singletary is going to be the most frequent one. But maybe the same way that we're seeing a mix of McKenzie and Foster, maybe we see a mix of Kroft and Knox as the one tight end in that set. So, we'll see where that goes to be able to kind of stretch that out. But
yeah, it could be a rep game going forward that, like you said, it doesn't necessarily have to change the formations, but this might be another one of those games that's hard to rep. If it's going to be a low scoring game, we might not see a lot of multiple possessions. It might be grinding out some possessions, things like that. So we may not get a chance at all the different personnel groupings or, snap counts maybe that they would ideally have for these guys going into the game, if it's the kind of game that I think it's going to be. And I think most people think it's going to
yeah, Vegas doesn't miss by that much all that
be. Not
often. So
often.
I expect it to be a reasonably low scoring game. Both defenses are the best 2 units of any of the 4 units for the team. So we'll kind of see where that goes.
There's special teams, though. We don't talk a lot about the other teams' special teams every week because it's kind of something you just pass over. But they've had a super consistent special teams, and that I do think is a worry of mine. Not just because they gave up a big touch they got a big touchdown recently, being the Steelers, that kind of changed the outcome of that Cardinals game. Not just because of that, just consistently we talked about it after the game for the Bills. They have a very consistent punter who's having a really good year.
Yeah.
That kind of field position and knowing that he's going to consistently do his job, that's going to be tough in a game like this. They have a good kicker. They have a guy that they feel pretty confident in kicking field goals. So they've just been a consistent unit this year, where the Bills have had a lot of nice things. Andre Roberts has actually had a really good year, even though everybody's frustrated with the special teams, but they just haven't been able to consistently put it all together for a 4-quarter game. If we talk about Bills not having a lot of 4-quarter games, well, special teams, I don't even know if they've put back to get 2 quarters back to back yet this year of any type of consistency. So we don't talk about special teams a lot from the other team, but that could be a pretty big difference in a close, low-scoring game. That's maybe one of the things that gives me the most fear, is the inconsistency of our special teams versus the consistency of theirs.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Chris Boswell's having a phenomenal season, has made every extra point and 26 of 28 field goals. Their punter, Jordan Berry, is having a really nice season. Deontay Johnson just took a punt back for a touchdown last week.
He was
and
close a few other times.
Oh, yeah, he's quick. So I think that they certainly have a good setup from a special team standpoint, and certainly seem to have a little bit of an edge. And kicking in Pittsburgh is one of the worst stadiums in the NFL to kick in. So Boswell certainly has the leg up from an experience standpoint there. And his, one of his only misses on the entire year is a 50-plus field goal. So I think he missed a 48 and a 53. And he's made every other kick all year, including every extra point. So having certainly a really good season for as hard as it is to kick in Heinz Field.
Yeah, so that could be a big difference in a very close game where it's 2 good defenses. The offenses might have a tough time moving the ball. If, like I said, when you go back to the defenses, you get a couple short fields for these guys, and you have a kicker like Boswell. That's a big advantage, I think, right now. Even though Hauschka had a nice rebound game, I think at least fans, I know the team says they have a lot of confidence right now in Steven. I'm not confident yet until I see him do it for a stretch of weeks consistently, and maybe nail a big one with something on the line for him. But for Boswell, I feel like every time he goes up to kick, that's points on the board for the Steelers.
Yeah, it certainly has been all year long. So let's get into a couple of our bets before we give our predictions for the game. I know I finally caught you after you came out to a large lead. I could barely see you in the distance. I finally caught up. What do we have on the docket for this week?
We're starting with it's a lot of Steelers bets here this week. So we're doing Steelers at 99.5 rushing yards. I think right now for the year they're averaging 94. They've upped it lately. They've had a good little bit of a run this last couple weeks here. Getting back Connor, I took the over on the 99.5 rush yards. I just don't know that the Bills defense is still totally fixed. They did really nice. They had a great game plan last week for Lamar Jackson and that rushing attack, but the Ravens still had over 100 yards on the ground. They still move the ball at times. So I don't know that the rush defense is totally fixed here. And you were happy to take the under, it seemed.
Yeah, no, I feel decent about it. I do think they're going to test it. I do think they're going to push it. I feel a little bit less good if James Conner is back,
Yeah.
but I do think they're going to find out and they're going to test it. I'm hopeful that they're really able to push this defense and get them into a negative game script. I think I've said that for weeks in a row now. The same with Dallas, the same with Denver, and the same with Baltimore. That early game script has so much to do with the outcome of the game, and that I'm hopeful the Bills can get out early and control this. And that's why our next one, I went with over 174.5 passing yards for, Mr. Duck Hodges, and that he's averaging about 164. So I think he's going to see a little bit more than he has in the past, because I think they're going to be trying to catch up a little bit. And the Bills will get out to a little bit of an early lead and maybe tilt the game script a little bit more than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way you're going to get this, in my opinion, is if it's a 2-score lead, if it's a 10-point lead or something like that, we have 2 possessions up on them, they start to feel like they have to press, then they go to Hodges. But I think primarily I felt pretty good at the under, just because I think it's going to be a close game. I think it'll be within a 1-score game at all points. And I don't think either team in this game is going to want to get away from the run too much. I think they both see that as the way to move the ball against each other. This is not going to be, in my opinion, a very fun game for the NFL. I think somebody that flexed this game, they're going to be like, what were you thinking? Why are you flexing? Although the game that they flexed it for, it would have been a horrible Sunday night game, but this is not going to be a premiere what the casual fan likes of the big scoring back and forth
Yeah.
shootout for Sunday Night Football this week, in my opinion.
Yeah, that Niners Saints 46-48 game, this is
Yeah.
not going to be that.
I don't think it's that. So that's why I was happy to go with the under there. But then we did Steelers. They are at a high sack rate. What's their average right now?
Almost 4 a game. They're averaging like
so
3.9 a game. They got 48 sacks on the year already. It's crazy. They're leading the NFL by a healthy amount.
You took the 3.5 on that, and I'm going to go with the under on that. And the reason why is I do think they'll dial up some pressures. I think that they are going to play a little bit tighter than they have, because I think there's a real fear of Josh Allen's legs with their defense. I don't think they faced anyone quite like him with his ability to get out. So I think they're going to play a little tight. They're going to leave something open for Josh. I think Josh will get a few pressures. He might shake a couple guys off, but I have a hard time feeling that they get him down 4 times in this game. They're going to hit him. They're going to get some hits on Josh, but hopefully he can continue to get the ball, get rid of the ball, get out of the pocket, make something happen. And I'm banking on my boy Josh Allen making some magic back there.
No, I think it's a smart pick, and it was right there on the line. I think that they're certainly going to bring a lot of pressure.
Right.
I'm hopeful that the reason they don't is because we see a huge game from Devin Singletary. I think that we need to see a lot of running game, a lot of push from that standpoint. So we'll see where it goes. And I think that, similar, we saw, 4 sacks against the Cowboys in a game that we won. We saw a couple of different things where we've had some pressure in the past. So they're going to bring it either way. And if they end up under that, I think it could be a really healthy game for the Bills to be able to put themselves in good position. So if you have any other wagers or any other ideas or things you think would be a tough pick for Aaron and I to decide which side of it we're on, shoot it to us on Twitter. We'd love to be able to add more to our tally here, but we'll do those for 3 points each and see if we can bring out a little bit more excitement as the game goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now is a good time too to get into our predictions, because we've kind of, I think, both laid out a scenario of this game that I think we're both pretty similar here. I really have been giving it a lot of thought this week, and I do feel like the Bills are going to be able to jump out a little bit in this game and get a little bit of a lead, whether that's just, staying a touchdown ahead or, 10 points, something, 2 possessions ahead. But I don't think they ever get it to the point where it's like we feel very confident that the Bills have a lead. I think this is going to stay a close game, but I think the Bills may be able to keep this team at arm's length, because if they get out to a lead against this offense that they're going up against, I feel like they can keep them at an arm's length with Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier drumming up a good game plan. So I have it as a 20-17 win for the Bills. I think both kickers will get some field goals, get a little action in here, but you're not going to see a lot of big, fantastic plays. We'll see some of the toxic differential 20-30 yard plays, but I really just don't think either one of these defenses is going to give up the big play that much. I think the big plays will come on the defensive side of the ball in this game. So I think it'll be a pretty boring for the casual fan, but really edge of our seat, frustratingly stressful game for Bills and Pittsburgh Steelers fans. But I do think Bills pick up their 10th win and clinch that spot with a couple weeks to go, playing with some free money.
I love it. I love it. I agree completely. I keep watching this, and I feel similar to how I have a couple other games, and I do think that the Steelers, it's dangerous because on the one hand, I do feel that they're propped up by some good fortune in some weird injuries they've played against, some rough, bad teams that they've played against. And I don't think they're as good as their record is. However, they also have built legitimate confidence, and that when you're winning games and doing that, that can become organic and that can become cumulative in the way that you approach the game and how you stack those things up. So I do think that there's a scenario where they start to believe in their own good fortune and the things that they put together here. So I keep looking at it. I think it's weird that they're favored over the Bills. I think I've seen it anywhere from, I think it came out pretty even, or even I saw some places where they had the Bills by 1. I now see it somewhere it's the Steelers by 2. And that just really surprises me. I think the Bills are going to be able to control this game. I think they're really going to confuse Duck Hodges. I don't think they're going to explode and have some phenomenal game, but I think they're going to be able to move the ball in the secondary. I think the Bills are going to be able to win maybe 24-13, and that they're going to be able to control some pieces of this game more so than what maybe is being predicted by some others. So we'll see where it shakes out here. But I do think the Bills get their 10th win. I think they lock up a playoff spot. I think they get themselves into a position where they can kind of ruin the day for the Patriots going in there and play with house money. I think that's a really good position to be in, where they've already locked up a playoff spot, can play loose and can play free, and be able to really bring a lot of pressure there. So I think that's what we're going to see this week. I think they're going to dial up a ton of pressure on Duck Hodges. I think they're going to really bring a lot the same way they did against Denver, and being able to face their Allen, and going through what they did for Brandon Allen was just bring a ton of pressure at him, and make him have to deal with it, and let our strong secondary cover and figure out that you can't do both. So that's what I think we're going to see this week. I think that they're going to be able to really shake things up, and that even with some bigger names coming back, I don't know how ready they're going to be able to play with Smith-Schuster and James Conner, and that the Bills are going to be able to bring this home maybe a little bit more comfortable than what is being predicted.
I hope so, man, because it's going to be a late night, and my bedtime's usually like 10:30. So doing the show after that is going to be tough. So it'll be much nicer if we've clinched a playoff spot and we can celebrate that a little bit here together on the show, because you know what, man? I think we deserve it.
I agree. I agree. I'm looking forward to it, and appreciate everything. You guys in the chat were awesome. Appreciate all of the input all the time. If you guys want to come be a part of this, be able to listen to us record live and interact with us, join the Slack channel, get all the great input and insight that we have on the Cover One app and everything we have going on. Come on over, become a premium member. Wherever you're listening to us, give us a rating, give us a review, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, help us out here, let people know what we have going on here. We appreciate it very, very much. If you haven't had a chance to give us a review on the site that you're listening on, we'd really appreciate it. Take out 2 minutes to be able to give us a review and let people know what you think about us. It really, really helps us out a lot. So if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, I do ask you, that's all Aaron wants for Christmas is for you to give him a review on iTunes.
I love Christmas and I love reviews. So please do it for the kids.
Aaron, where can the people find you?
You can find me, Aaron Quinn 716, enjoying all kinds of fun conversations with people. I got some people mad by giving the Patriots the benefit of the doubt this week, so my mentions were pretty horrible. But I think I took it like a champ. I don't think I blocked anybody or anything like that. So I'm all for it. I'm all game. So come find my hot takes and just lay into me when I give them.
I respect the fact that you have honor and principle in guilty until innocent until proven guilty, except for the Patriots. That was just terrible.
Yeah, I'm a very stubborn bastard.
You guys can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompson, GregTompsett. Come on over, find me. Have a good time with Bills fans all the time. Looking forward to a fun game today. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with myself most of the day Sunday, and just watch Red Zone or something like that. My 1 p.m. slot has been so steady every single week that it's going to be a little bit weird watching games, but looking forward to it. We will take advantage. I am genuinely excited about having Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth calling the game and having the extra cameras for the Sunday night game. I think that's going to be fun to be able to have that kind of stage.
Psychopath.
I'm weird. I like Collinsworth. I think he's good. But yeah, he's not everyone's favorite. But we'll see where everything's going here. Thanks again for everybody in the chat. Thank you guys for listening. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.